Today we're going to talk about how to solve quadratics using the square root method. It's pretty easy, so as long as you're paying attention, today should be easy for you. Standard form of a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Now, if the bx term is missing, see how that has the middle term, b to the x? If it's missing, you can use the square root method to solve it. See how down here we have x squared, which is the ax squared term, and 12, which is the constant, but there's no x to the first term down here anywhere? That means since it's missing, we can use this, or we can solve this using the square root method. Okay, let's go back to 9th grade a second, or really even further than that. If you're given an equation like this, how do you solve for x? Right. And that's because those are called what? Inverse operations. Okay? Do you know what the inverse operation of a squared is? Well, right, square root. They will cancel each other out. So if we're trying to get this x isolated, we need to get the 2 away from it. Well, it's the power of 2, so to cancel it, you take the square root of it. Since you took the square root of that side, you have to take the square root of this side. That becomes x equals the square root of 12. However, that's not the final answer. You can simplify it further. Okay, we can do a factor tree to that 12. What are the factors of 12? And then 4 breaks down into 3 is just prime. So now we circle our pairs, right? Okay, now, when you write your answer, since we were solving for x, anytime you're solving for x and you take the square root to solve, you have to put plus or minus on your answer. Now, let me show you with an easier example why. You don't have to write this down. If you have x squared equals 16, you don't have to write this down, just watch. If I'm trying to solve for this x, how do I get rid of that power of 2? Square root it. And then I square root this side. Okay? So x equals the square root of 16, which is 4. But think about it. If you go back to your original question, isn't a positive 4 squared 16? Yes. Think about it. Positive 4 squared is just 4 times 4, right? Which is 16. So a positive 4 will equal 16. But won't a negative 4 also equal 16 when you square it? Think about it. If you put a negative in there and square it, doesn't that just mean negative 4 times negative 4, which is also positive 16? So do you now see why you have the need for the plus or minus on the answer? Because when you square it, no matter what sign it was, it's going to turn positive. Okay, so now let's try number 2. What do you think you need to do first on number 2? Right. For this one, here's your ax squared term. But you have 2 constant values, 2 c values, so they need to be combined first. So we're going to subtract 16. Okay, that gives me x squared equals what? Negative 26. Now to solve for x, how do I get rid of the squared, the power of 2? Square root it. So x equals the square root of negative 26. Can I leave my answer like that? No. Can you factor tree at 26? What are the factors? And aren't both of those prime? So doesn't that mean there's no pairs, so everybody was being good, everybody goes back up in the house? That means the square root of 26 cannot be simplified. However, you can't leave that negative in there. You have to take it out and put an I, and then you put plus or minus. So the answer is plus or minus I square roots of 26. Okay, so number 3, what do you think you're going to do first? Correct. First, we're going to move the 75 to the opposite side. Whenever you're solving using the square root method, you want to always move your constant to the right side. So now we have 3x squared equals. Okay, now to isolate x, what's next? Right? And that gives me x squared equals negative 25 though. And so now to get rid of the squared, what do I do? Okay, so x equals, what's the square root of 25? But since it's a negative on the inside, what do you have to put? An I, and since you were solving for x and you square rooted, plus or minus. Okay? Alright, number 4, what do I do first? Correct? So now, okay, so we divide by 24 on both sides. What do you get when you divide negative 144 by positive 24? Okay, but it's a negative 6, right? Okay, so now you have to square root both sides so you can cancel out that squared. And then if you try to factor tree 6, what happens? You're just going to get 2 prime numbers. So that means everybody goes back in the house. Nobody was being bad. So everybody goes back in the house. However, anytime there's a negative under the square root, you have to write I on the outside and then plus or minus. So plus or minus I squared root of 6. Now turn to page 6. So here we go. Number 1, what variable are we trying to isolate here? Okay, why is it not isolated? It's squared. How do you undo that? Square root. So now you have k equals the square root of 76. That's not in simplest form. Can't we take the square root of 76 to the side and factor tree it? What are the factors of 76? How about we use a calculator and divide 76 by 2? 38? I thought y'all were still guessing. Okay, so then that becomes a 2 and a 19. All 3 of those are prime. 19 is prime. Okay, so we have a set of 2's that we can circle. One gets killed. One gets kicked out. The 19 goes back inside. But then you got to remember, anytime you're solving and you end up having to square root to get the answer, you have to put plus or minus. Why do I not have to put an I this time? It wasn't a negative number under the square root. Okay, number 8. What do I do first on number 8? Divide by the 7. So x squared equals, now to isolate the x, what do I do? So x equals, can you factor tree 3? No, it's a prime number, so it'll stay inside. But the negative will become an I, and you can't forget your plus or minus. Alright, number 13. What do I do first? Okay, that gives me x squared equals what? Negative 48. Okay, now what do I do? Right? So x equals, can that be simplified? Okay, so I'm going to take it to the side and factor tree 48. What are its factors? Pay attention. 6 times 8, 6 becomes 2 and 3, 8 becomes, and then can I go further? Right. No. Okay, you can act like they're on a sectional and they split it apart. Okay, so now the only thing going back in this house is that 3. Get rid of one of each of the boyfriends, kick the girls out, and what do they make on the outside? Multiply. 4, but since it was negative, you have to put an I, and since we were solving, plus or minus. Okay, I want you to work on the rest of these. Monday we're learning something new. Tuesday we're learning something new. Wednesday and Thursday we're reviewing the test.